So Cassie had asked me to do a couple of these what's new, which is, it's interesting, I've been doing these for a while. So we'll kind of take a little trip down memory lane as we take a look at some of this. But just before we get started, I real quick want to introduce myself. So this is me, Caleb Funk. I'm a technical team manager here at IMAGINiT in the Manufacturing Solutions Division, which means I deal with all the different manufacturing tools that we have available, such as Inventor, AutoCAD, AutoCAD Mechanical, AutoCAD Electrical, and of course all the Vault products as well. So I deal with a pretty wide range of tools have throughout the years. Just about IMAGINiT, when we're looking at all these different types of tools, there's always new technology, new things, and one thing a lot of people will think about is the idea of training behind that, getting a what's new class and updates and, being able to see the different tools that are available. But I really want you to think, too, about some of the other things IMAGINiT does. So we can definitely help you figure out the best way to use a particular solution, to go through and uncover new workflows or new tools that might be available. And one thing that I'll touch on very briefly is the idea of the iLogic updates that are in here. So there is some additional things with iLogic, and that can come through optimization. That's where we can come in with that as well, where we can, whether it's writing specific code or working with some of those tools, there's a lot of different things that we can do that go beyond the idea of training and support, but into that really uncovering a full technology solution and being able to optimize it for you. IMAGINiT, you may know, has offices all across North America. I mentioned this yesterday. I didn't fix it yet, but we've got some new offices I need to account for. I am hiding in one of these red dots here in Ohio. I'm in the Toledo area. And I work with customers all throughout as far, usually it's about as far west as Omaha, Nebraska there, and then all up into Toronto and the whole Ontario area, New York, all of that. I've got counterparts who cover the other areas that we have in there as well. And then who we are, of course, is IMAGINiT is a big provider. We're the leading provider of Autodesk solutions, also like a Geosystem Solutions, and we're part of a larger company called RAND Worldwide. And our other divisions, RAND 3D, deals with Dassault software and Dassault and PTC training. And an Ascent writes courseware. So if you've ever taken an AutoCAD class with IMAGINiT, or really almost anywhere, you've probably run across Ascent software at some point. So for Autodesk, PTC, and Dassault, they are an absolute, they're training material, and I'm biased. I've been using it for years. I used it before I came to IMAGINiT. It's really, really excellent training material and continues to be. So being a part of that is great that we can leverage sides of all different parts of the company. So I mentioned that I had been with IMAGINiT for a while. It's actually, this is my 19th year. So I started looking when I was doing my Vault presentation that I did yesterday. I kind of started thinking that through and all the different things that have changed with Vault. And I kind of took a look back and looked through Inventor and taking a look at the Inventor timeline. I should say 19 years of Inventor products, but Inventor 1.0, which I did not use, came out in September 1999. I remember there was a lot of talk about it, the idea of Rubicon and where it was coming from. And that's kind of when it first started, 1.0, fairly basic at that point. So I still continued to use Mechanical Desktop. The company I worked for at the time, that was a big area of focus for us. We had a lot of Mechanical Desktop customers. And then the first time I really started using Inventor was Inventor 5.3. And I don't know why they just didn't call it 6. I can't remember all the differences from 5 to 5.3. But for whatever reason, that was the one that kind of caught on. And you'll notice there from Inventor 1 to 5.3 was just about 3 years. So at that point, they were releasing Inventor about every 6 months. It was a very aggressive cycle to get new features and functionality in there. And the first time there was an annual release, it was a full year between releases, was April of 2006. So up to that point, it had been one time. There was one time it felt like there were 3 Inventors in 1 year. But after that, it moved to the more stable platform we're familiar with and went to an annual release. And that takes us up today, Inventor 2019, which was released in May. So it's just been interesting it's always interesting to me to look back, think about the different tools, kind of how they've changed and what's been updated over that course of time as we've gone through. So I'll talk a couple of things about just some of the enhancements and where they come from. And if you're not using this today, there is a tool, on the forums, there's the Inventor Idea Station. And so many of these enhancements are directly from customer requests. So this is something where customers had suggested something, had maybe taken a look at a particular tool. I said, oh, man, it'd be great if. And that's where a lot of this comes from. So again, I'm going to really recommend that if you have an idea, take a look at this Inventor Idea Station to put your idea into practice. I have a lot of customers who ask me, well, hey, can you tell Autodesk it'd be great if I have exactly the same sway that you do? So go here, put your information in, and then you can send that out. You can give ideas kudos so that there's more, the more kudos something gets, the higher it goes up. And Inventor's fairly responsive. There's a lot of times we'll see things that show up and get a good response and pretty quickly get implemented into the software. When we say quickly, it's within a few releases. Usually there are several releases out, but it is just a great thing to communicate your concepts and what you see would be better directly to Autodesk. Okay, so we'll start taking a look here at some of the new features within 2019 and some of the different tools that we can access. And one of the first ideas of Inventor 2019 is how it's connected. And I talked about this. This is a recurring theme within the 2019 products, because if you were on my Vault webcast yesterday, you heard a lot about this type of thing. The idea of, and I'll start out here, shared views. I can get to it. There we go, shared views. So the idea of a shared view is to create a visual representation from within the desktop and give it a link that people can view. So we've been doing this type of thing for a really long time. We said, well, hey, we've got a particular component. We're going to share this out to a DWF file, and then I can email that around, which is great. DWF files are a very, very powerful tool, but the shared views doesn't use DWF files. At least I don't think it does. I'm not sure what it uses. It's all done online. So there's a tool, and I'm just going to share my desktop here real quick. At least I think I am. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to share my desktop. And I'm going to jump over here. So here's Inventor, but I'm actually going to jump to Chrome real quick. And I'm going to go to this website, viewer.autodesk.com. So this website, I'm going to suggest you take a look at if you haven't already. It is definitely I'll go ahead and just click Get Started Viewing here. And I'm logged into this account. So these are views that I've generated already. I was generating them yesterday. And I'll kind of show you how this works. But the idea is I can upload a viewable directly to this viewer.autodesk.com. It's all based off of my information. The viewable gets placed right into here. I can go see it, and I can take a look at it. I can even come in, and if I've got this enabled, I can begin taking some measurements off of it. So I can see distances and depths and some other things that are available for that. And I'll say, yep, and delete my little dimension there. So there's some tools that are available within the Autodesk products that allow me to come take a look at this. And here I've got this one. I'm going to jump back. Here I've got a drawing that I've loaded in. And again, this is right from the tool that I can send this up here. You do not need anything installed on your desktop to view this. This can be viewed in any browser. It can even be viewed on mobile devices. Back here in Inventor, I'm going to go grab a component. Let's see, not that guy, not that guy. We'll grab this one. I'm just going to open up this piece right here real quick. And if I want to, I have some options of how I want to work with this. So in this assembly, you can see I've got my weldment, my different features, my different pieces that are in here. I'll go ahead and send this whole thing. I've got a collaborate option, and I'm just going to go to my shared views, and it's going to show me the shared views that I currently have. Those are the ones I was just looking at. So I've got the wheel, and I'm going to create a new shared view of this one. And I've got a few options. I can hide component names, I can hide part properties, but I'm just going to go ahead and share that. It's going to process it here in the background. So it's going to take a few minutes to push that up. But once it's up there, it's a link that I can share and that I can send to people, and it's not going to require anything in terms of a viewable. So you don't have to have design review, you don't have to have true view, you don't have to have anything. So now I've got that up there. I'll just go ahead and view it in the browser. So now it pulls up my Autodesk viewer. There's my information. So okay, I can come in and see that. There's all the info that I just sent to it. It even has a model browser in here, so I could come in and turn different components on and off. I can go view specific components that are in there. Again, I can turn those off if I want to. The control that you have and the fact that this viewable is out here is really, really pretty cool. If I take a look at properties of a particular component, I can get its name, its appearance, whatever other properties I want to associate to that. All of that is built right into this. And I don't have any scenes or views in here, but I could pull those in as well. So what a great tool to have just as part of this built right into a web client. And again, you could view this on a iPhone. It's what I was played around with that yesterday, and you can take a look at that on the iPhone. So this is just part of the new Inventor tool suite that we have, the idea of shared views, and then I can publish out those shared views. These do automatically expire in 30 days, and I can extend it or I can delete it. So if I want to share that with someone, all I have to do is copy the link. So I'll just copy the link that I have, and then I'll drop back into our WebEx meeting here. And that's something that I could then send out to everyone if I wanted to. So I'll just send that link out. So if you wanted to take a look at my information, it's pretty straightforward to jump in and take a look at that. And it's a great, great tool that we have. That's not the only connection tool that we have, though. There's also Autodesk Drive. And Autodesk Drive has been around for a little bit. But now it's getting deeper and deeper integrated into the tools where we can send files directly to Autodesk Drive. It's a subscription benefit. So this is allowing teams, usually smaller teams, to share data pretty easily. The idea behind Autodesk Drive, if you've ever used Dropbox, you've got the basic idea. It's a location that we can send files. You can create new folders. You can move that back and forth. But part of the idea behind it is it's CAD aware. So it understands if you open an assembly that it needs to get all of the other parts that go along with that. It needs to get some of the other information that links to that and how that needs to show up. So it's a great series of tools that you can use to share that information, to publish directly to it so that we can call up what we need. Along those lines with Autodesk Drive is also the idea of AnyCAD for Fusion. So now, Fusion 360 files are a part of the AnyCAD option we have within Inventor, where we can open that AnyCAD information right within Inventor, or we can open Inventor files within Fusion. They can go back and forth. We can also use the Fusion 360, the drive, to share that information and collaborate. So this is another way that we can collaborate back and forth. The idea of a connected Inventor is really powerful. The shared views and then being able to access the information on the drive, it's a great benefit of subscription, and it's a great way to access that. As I was pointing out with Vault yesterday, this is a big thing. Being able to share information beyond just our engineering group to external stakeholders is a really common request that we'd have. So Inventor 2019 is also, it's a professional grade tool, and there's certain things that they've done to kind of facilitate that, and I want to talk about a few of those as we go through. One of them is just enhanced performance. And this is always difficult. I love when I have a presentation to do and they're like, hey, it's faster. It's always kind of hard to demonstrate, because as you look, it's hard to gauge that part against your part or whatever else it is. But I will talk about a few things that, as I've been working with 2019, have really stood out to me. there definitely is enhanced performance on assemblies. And this is something that everybody has been asking for. It seems like as soon as, people got Inventor, they started pushing how big the assemblies could be. So I'll tell you, just the pan, zoom, rotate with an assembly seems to have been just enhanced, and it's just much easier and more fluid. But what we'll see is in-place edit has been a big deal. Editing components in place, it's much easier to move between that. Design views, I have really noticed that. Switching between different representations, just amazing how quick that works and much faster that is. Positional representations, there have been huge improvements in just the performance overall. Adding section views, assembly features. Express mode has a few more options that are available within it, and then being able to drive a constraint. All of this has been enhanced overall. So it's not something that I can point to that you can specifically see, like, oh yes, and I haven't benchmarked a lot of this yet, but as you go through and start taking just the feel of it, and I'll play with an assembly here in just a moment just to kind of get an idea, this is definitely much more powerful than what we've seen before. What's interesting is it wasn't just within assemblies that they've added some of this. It's also within drawings. So view creation, just in general, starting out with views, when we have hidden lines removed, shaded views, view navigation. If we have updates for views that include level of detail, design view, positional representations, projected views are much faster. And if there's a reference part and the reference part extended beyond the view margins, that has been pretty significantly sped up in terms of just how it's reacting and what we're taking a look at. Okay, so I am going to go here and share my screen again. And again, this is something that isn't, it's not always easy to show necessarily, but I'll grab this assembly that I have, and this is a fairly sizable assembly. And I apologize, I'm going to shut down my shared views. One quick thing before I actually do, I'll point out this shared views is a palette and can actually be incorporated, like I can have a model palette and a shared views palette right over here as well. I don't need this anymore right now, so I'll shut it down, but it can just be incorporated into that, and we'll see some more of that functionality here in a few minutes. So if I'm looking at this particular assembly, I've got 15,685 components, just 920 unique ones though, so it's not huge, but it's, I've got a lot of information in here. And just the ability to move that around, and hopefully it comes through in the WebEx the way we're seeing it here, it's just smoother. Just the idea of and my shadows shut off there, but as soon as those are gone, my gosh, it's just much easier to work with in terms of zooming in, zooming out, manipulating all those different types of things. If I go here and take a look at a view, this was something that we might run into from time to time where it was difficult to look at the information, understand what's going on, view it, those types of things, and that has just become much, much smoother overall. I'm going to do a section view in here, and doing a section view in an assembly of this size is probably not something I would want to try. It just takes a while, but you notice how quickly it responds to my section view, and even if I start to adjust that and change it and pull out my depth, I'm just getting a lot. The feedback to that is just much more responsive than what we would see before in previous releases, so that we can put that information in. So it's just nice that they've updated that. I don't know exactly what was changed for that to happen, but the idea of an assembly of size, being able to pretty quickly view it, see the information, move around it, is definitely significant. Now I'll jump over here. I've got, let's say, I should have this larger one here. So I've got an assembly here. This is 727 components. So I've got a decent amount open that I have right here. There's a lot of different pieces, parts, different things going on. You notice I've got all of this different tube and hose that's running around it. Well, what I want to take a look at is creating a drawing off of that. So I'm going to bring in my base view, and we'll do that 621.802. And you'll notice it just, boom, it just very, very fast and smooth in creating that. So it's not the biggest assembly I've ever seen, but as we take a look, we've got a fair amount of information, and I want to adjust my views and get everything just the way I want it to. So I'll say, yeah, it looks good. We'll move that guy over here, and then I want another view over here, and I also want an isometric. Actually, we'll change that isometric in a second. And oh, good night, I canceled out. Let's try it one more time. So I'm going to go grab my view that I have. Again, pops right in, and we'll run it this way this time. That sounds good. We'll say, yep, I want one of those right here, but it needs to be a little bit smaller. So those in-place editing tools that we saw in previous releases, you can see how quickly those come in and accept that. I'll just go pull my different pieces. Now I'm going to want a different isometric, so I'll go kill that one. But you see how quickly it does the hidden lines, does the information, and right now I'm ready to go. So this has a lot of info going on with all of those hidden lines and all that information, and it's just faster. It's all there is to it. The response is so much better than what we've seen before in previous releases that we've worked with. So again, I don't have any specific benchmarks that I've gone through and said, oh, in 2018 it took this long and here it took this long, but it does make a big difference just in placing that information, manipulating it, moving it around, seeing how the things update as we go through the models. So just a great addition to that professional grade idea of Inventor. One other thing that I'll just mention, and it's just a little different than what we've done before. If I go here to Content Center, one thing they've done is change the way that Content Center remembers parts, and this is what I'm talking about. I'll place this component in, and it didn't take very long, but you notice that it went through and generated that component. And it goes and takes it and says, okay, what size do you want? And we'll say 820 here. And it generates that component. Content Center, of course, is just a library of parts that generates it on an as-needed basis. If I go right back there, I'm just going to place that same thing. It is in memory. It's not going to have to spend much time remembering that component. Okay, so it's an M820, done. It caches it so that we can use it again and again. So it caches whatever Content Center parts I pull within a session so that I can very, very quickly pull them again. Because it seems like we're always saying, oh my gosh, I need another one of those screws, another one of those. And it's not taking the time to look at the database for it. It's just cached in RAM. And so it can pull it out. As soon as you shut down Inventor, that clears the cache and we have to do it again. But just wanted to point that out, that it does remember that information so that we can easily pull the same parts and pretty quickly go to that. So we talked about the idea of collaboration, being connected to the things, whether through the different views or the different information. Talked about the idea of just performance enhancements. And you will see that across the board. There's a few other areas that have come in with that make things a little quicker. But I want to talk just a little bit about the Inventor Experience here. And probably the biggest change that we see and in terms of functionality is the new whole command, and it is a faster, smarter whole command. This is something that I didn't know I needed until this showed up. So I'll go here to just, I believe this part. Yep, that one looks good. So the whole command, of course, that's been there since Inventor 1, and it hasn't looked much different for quite some time. But I'm going to start this, and you'll notice that it is a tab built into my panel over here. So it's built right into, now I could float that if I wanted to. I can take that palette out, but I really like it just kind of built into here. So now here's my whole properties. What do I want to do? And typically the first thing we would do is we would pick a sketch, or we would pick a cylindrical, or we would pick a location, but we always would go through and tell it what type we're doing. Well, I mentioned this whole command was smarter, and part of the way that it's smarter is just based off the geometry that I'm choosing, it's going to start putting the different sizes in. Now this is metric, so I'm going to go ahead and make that 10mm hole. So I didn't have to tell it that the placement I was using was based off of concentric hole. I just chose that. And in the middle of this command, I can go place another one. I can say I want one there. And I'm going to drop one out here in space and say, and it's off of that edge 25 millimeters. And then we'll go ahead and say it's off of this edge. 50 should do it. We'll say 50 millimeters. So I'm placing multiple hole types inside this one command. And I'll place another one on a sketch all within that single command. So I place some concentric, some using dimensions, one using a sketch information. So it's interpreting that based off of what I'm choosing. Now, when it comes to type, termination, direction, a lot of that is going to look very much the same. We've got clearance holes, tapped holes, tapered holes. I can do counter bores, so I've got all that information, placed in. So I can control that just like what we saw before, where we're placing in the different pieces. But the idea is I can select multiple holes and using all kinds of different options when I'm doing that. So I've got some information, different sizes, placement, direction, just like we would normally expect. And I'm going to say, okay, sounds good. And of course, it places all of those in. It's all within a single hole command, all as part of that right there. So I'll just back up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you sharing your Inventor right now?
Oh, my word. I hope I am. Yeah.
I don't think you are.
Good night. I forgot an incredibly important part. Well, that's okay, because I enjoyed that so much, I'll run through it again. All right, Cassie, is it coming through?
Yes, it is.
Oh, my goodness. That is a rookie mistake, Cassie. You'll have to, yeah. Yes, Radu. Hey, Radu, how's it going? Yep, only the PowerPoint. I was just talking away. Okay, so let's try this again. When I start the whole command, instead of the normal dialog box that we're familiar with, we get the panel. And again, it's kind of built into the settings that I have over here. And the thing that I think is just so smart about this is that when I go to place it, I'll go ahead and just pick this surface and I'll pick this edge. As soon as I do, it's a concentric hole. I don't have to specifically tell it it's a concentric hole. It's just pulling this information based off of my selections. If I pick it off of an edge, I'm now working with the idea of, and I'll pick this edge and say 50. I'm working with the idea of having my information placed in, linearly. Or I could pick a point and place it in on a sketch. All of that right within here. If I want a different size hole with different information, I can actually create and just say, hey, new hole. It places those in, and I'm right on to my next one. Now I could come in and start placing in a new one with additional information. So I really like the updates. It's one of those things that I've been using the whole command for so long. I thought, well, I don't know what else they could do different. It's basically has everything I need. There might be a few additions into my thread library or something like that. I was really surprised when they completely changed the way that the whole command works, the way that that interface comes in and how we can see all of that. So it's a great tool. It's just really powerful for using, and I'll just manipulate this around a little bit. There we go. It's a great tool for adding that in. And what I think we're going to see, here's my prediction. You can write it down. Over the next several years, we are going to see more commands go this direction. I think we're going to see this sort of tabbed interface more and more. And as we kind of saw, there were some other tools where it would first appear on one, the heads-up display and some of those things, and now we're beginning to see it more. I think this is the direction it's going to go. We're going to see more of these types of tools. As I mentioned when I wasn't showing anything, my whole command does give me a single hole that contains all those. Essentially, it created a sketch, right? So in the background, it created a sketch that contains all of that information. But instead of we're kind of wrestling through and putting all that in, it's pretty simple to just take the whole command and determine where I want to place that. So that's probably the single biggest thing. If you fired up Inventor 2019 tomorrow and took a look at it, the thing that you would say, oh man, that's, I can see a difference, would probably be the whole command. A lot of the others are subtle, behind the scenes, kind of quick ways to do things, but that's where that would come in. kind of along these lines. A new option that we have is the idea of an inverted fillet, where we can have concave or convex fillets. It's just an option within there, and I will make sure to share my screen this time. All right, that's where I need to be. And it's just part of the fillet command. I'll just select this edge and bump this out here. I can go through and switch it to an inverted fillet. Okay. Obviously, there were ways that we could do that before. We take something and extrude it and give it that information. But this is just a feature that's in here that I can determine with each one that I have. Which way does it go? Is it an inverted fillet? What size do we have? And we can control those different edges to push that in. So there's my regular fillet, and there's my inverted fillet. So it can be concave, convex. Instead of just rounding off the corner, we can put those in just part of the fillet command, so it's controlled as part of that. So simple enough. It's just an addition more than it is a change to the tool, but allows us to place that in pretty quickly. With sheet metal, not a whole lot has changed. A couple of things that they have adjusted is the idea of mid-plane sheet faces. So sheet metal faces. So when I put in a sheet metal face, I can determine, how much of it goes to each side. And one thing they did that was kind of nice was the idea of a laser weld relief shape. So it's a new shape that we have available, and it's a kind of a simple shape, but it's really designed to work well with laser cutters. So that if we're laying this out and we're nesting it and going through and pulling out laser pattern from that we would have that information in there. So it's just a simple addition, but it is kind of nice that they've done that. Frame generator. Now, this isn't something completely new. We could get some of this information before, but cut detail info and the frame the GL property that shows the length, these were always parameters that were in our part, but they weren't I properties. You could export them, you could set them up so that they became I properties, but by default they weren't. So now we have the ability to do that they're built into it. So we'll see that the length, width, height, those parameters that are part of that, as well as cut length, cut detail information, are custom properties of the part automatically. We don't have to do anything special for that to happen. It's just built into it. So I'll go over here. I'm being very cautious to make sure and share my screen. And I'll take, okay, so I've got an assembly here. I'll just throw in some frame generator parts on that just so I can bring a few pieces into place. And let's get a member here. Actually, I'm going to go with square. Yeah. And I'm not going to take this too far. I don't want to push all of it in. I'll say, yep, that sounds good. We'll start setting up the basic frame. So all that's going to work pretty much the same as what we had seen before. The difference is going to be once I apply some information, once I apply some cuts, maybe I'll just do a quick miter here to this end. So now I've mitered that. And then I will do a trim and extend, not trim and extend, excuse me, trim to frame here on the other side. And we'll take this and this. Let's go that way. Okay, so I've adjusted that up. So I've changed my length on that component that I have. And now I'll just go to open this guy up by itself. So I've got a component generated from the frame. I've got, a different cut length, different features on there. And the idea is that in my I properties, if I take a look at my custom, I've got cut detail 1. It's a miter at 45 degrees. It knows that there's on this end that's already in there. So I can include that information in the bill of materials. And then my overall length that I have here does get, it used to not, if I made in the cuts and I made the information, that wouldn't get updated. Now it's getting updated accordingly. So it knows on one end I've got a miter of 45 degrees. It knows on this end I've got an overall length of this. It sees what has happened for that to take place and pushes that in. Again, we used to do this, we kind of worked around this to get there because we did have the idea of, as we were taking a look at our parameters, a lot of that's in the parameters. If I look at my custom parameters, I can see that information. We just had to expose it and do some things. The idea is it's already built into it now, and we do have that cut information that's part of that. So that was a pretty cool addition with what how they wanted to set that up. The assembly constraints. I gotta keep an eye on my time here. But one thing is the angle constraint is persistent. So that took me a little bit to figure out. I guess, you know, first I was like, okay, what does that mean? I don't know if you guys had ever gone through an Inventor assembly, had something held at an angle, and then you move it slightly or you insert another component and suddenly the 15 degrees that you thought you were holding at, it's holding from the opposite 15 degrees. That's essentially been fixed, is what it comes down to. So while they're talking about it as a new feature, really it's just something that's needed to be fixed, and now they have. A couple other kind of interesting things is the insert constraint and how it works, and the mate center line. So insert constraint, I can lock the rotation. Insert was amazing, but it left things that could still be rotated. And so you would end up with an assembly that wasn't fully constrained. And anytime you have an assembly, anything that's not fully constrained, and we add new components, there's a lot of math to be done. So once you added in a couple hundred fasteners, it just seemed to slow down. Now we can lock rotation down. It's pretty simple. And the mate center line now kind of acts like insert does, where I can choose whether it's an aligned or opposed item that's in there. So again, I'm going to share my screen. Cool. Oh, not that. All right. Don't need you anymore. Or do I? Something is not where I need it to be. I can't get to my Inventor. That is super fascinating. Hang on just a second, guys. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. There was a sharing window. It's in the way of my Inventor. I'm going to try and make it not be in the way. Well, that is super strange. Yeah, there's a, I'm going to just jump back into trying this a different way. All right, I'll see if I can get that going. For some reason, there's a sharing window that seems to be taking all the focus from my Inventor, and I can't make it go away. A couple other things that I'll just mention here while we're taking a look at this, the idea of custom color schemes. Now, if you're a real hardcore Inventor hacker, you found this out a while ago anyway, that part of the software development kit, you could get a custom color scheme. And the custom color scheme would allow you to, there we go. The custom color scheme, you could go in and you could change it so you had different colors, change it so your selection color was different, update that type of information. That was, that's been around for a while now, but it wasn't really supported. It was something that had been written but wasn't fully supported within Inventor. Now you can go in and create your own color schemes. I dug into this a little bit, and I will tell you, there are things that I have no idea what they are. There's the simple ones like background, foreground, 2D sheet, what things do I want there. You get a little deeper into it, and suddenly you're looking at it, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. You're like, well, I don't know what this particular selection item is. I don't know that I've ever seen that color in Inventor. But the idea is you can generate your own custom color schemes. They're now part of Inventor and can move forward with it. All right, I'm going to try and share my desktop once again. I want to show just a couple of quick things, and then we'll come close to wrapping up. But the idea of Inventor 2019 being a connected and professional-grade tool that with a truly quality experience is what I wanted to try and get across today. So hang on just a moment. I'm going to share this. All right, I can get it now. Yeah, I had a sharing window that had focus, and I couldn't get to anything. It was kind of unusual. Okay, so what I've got is I'll just do a simple insert. So constraints, just like we always seen. And really, they borrowed this idea from joints. It's definitely where it came from. But I'll go ahead and say, yep, that goes into there. And it pops right over. And here's my option. Do I want to lock the rotation on that or not? And so you notice that I had it checked from before. It puts a little symbol on here that I can see that it's locked down. I can say, yep, let's lock that rotation. Sounds great. And does exactly what you'd expect it to, right? It's done. I can't, that's what I would want. The fact that so many times I've seen people go in and put some sort of angle constraint on that to try and hold it into place, which worked, but it's nice that we can lock that down. If you do show constraints, I'm going to show the constraints that are on that. It will pop up with my lock information so that I know that it's locked down. And I can begin to see, where that's at. The other thing with constraints is I'll do a quick constraint here between the center line of this. And you notice I've got my normal mate tools right now. But as soon as I pick the center line of this, it says, well, okay, do you want them to be opposed, aligned, right? So it's kind of the same idea. I can flip which direction that is. Or I can do undirected, which just takes it wherever it's at right now. But I really like mate centerline to centerline, but I would get into that a few times where I would almost get stuck. Oh shoot, I've got to delete this one, turn it around using my rotate tool, then mate it back together because it was just picking up the center line in whatever orientation it currently was. Now I can adjust that so that I can flip it one direction or the other. I can choose which way I want to go. And of course, I mentioned the idea of, go here to my application options. Yes, my application options and colors. And just simple enough, there's my button, customize schemes. This is what I will mention. If I look at selection, there's tertiary select, auxiliary select. I have not seen a lot of these colors, or if I have not paid attention. So you can get right down to when you're creating a feature, what previews look like, all these different information, what that's going to look like, flat pattern, wire, color, all of that. There's one thing I wish they had that they don't. And I'll take, for instance, I deal with this Millennium a lot. I'm going to say new. I wish there was a copy button, but at least new does do, it's going to copy it. So most of the time, I want deep blue. I just want one or two things to be different. Or I want the sky representation. I just need a couple of things to be different. So what new does, don't waste your time looking for copy, new creates a copy of that. So you don't have to set everything from scratch. You can go through and make some adjustments with what that's going to look like. The other thing I thought was interesting is you can adjust the translucency of any of the colors in there. So maybe I want it just to be, this paler, more washed out color. You can adjust that information. So I just wanted to point that out. I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions, but there's a couple of quick things I'll show here as I'm going through. I'm just going to return back up a notch. Jump over to this part. There we go. We got this guy. iLogic has actually updated a couple of things within it. And one of the things that it has updated is the ability to name a face. So my selection window is messing with me again. I can't get a hold of it. So we can come in and we can name a particular face. And then when we do mates, we can tell it, it's not just a face. We could mate a cylinder. We could name all kinds of things so that when we do go, when we're dealing with iLogic locking things together, we can add constraints between named faces. So it's just a bit of functionality they've added for iLogic that we can do that. iLogic's got a couple other little things as well. If you would have noticed, as some of the point releases go through, autocomplete's in there. The idea of capturing the state is much cleaner than it was. So they haven't exposed any new functionality within iLogic. They've just made the experience a little smoother as we go along. All right. So I did want to leave a little time for questions. And what I'll do, Cassie, I don't know if any have been rolling in as we've been going along, but I'll open it up a little bit and see if there's any questions I can answer.